Okay, it's time to get underway. What we'll be doing in this lesson is establishing a foundation for our overall model. We'll become familiar with the layer manager, and then we're going to lay in some basic construction lines which we'll be building our 3D geometry on in later lessons. So to begin with, to get familiar with the layer manager, we can access it via two ways. Firstly, if we go up to the top menu bar, left click on the word edit and scroll down to layers, and then click the top of that menu tab, edit layers, our standard menu will come up. Once we become familiar with our layer manager, it allows us to break our model up into manageable chunks. The first stage in most modelling processes is to establish some construction lines that we can use as the basis of our model. They're not necessary to the final presentation, but they're critical elements that we use to build the 3D geometry off. What I normally do is establish these construction lines under a separate layer. In order to do that, for example, we're going to double click on the word default in order to rename that layer, and then in capitals I'll just type con for construction. Let's repeat that procedure in the layers underneath, and we'll change those layer names. So the next one will be con A, double click on the one underneath that, con B, and so on and so forth. So these layers can be used to build things, but then switched off or deleted once they are no longer required. So let's group them underneath the con layer. So we just left click and drag that over the top. So the next thing we're going to do is establish just a couple of layers which will end up as the 3D geometry. So it's going to be a traffic light design, so we're going to group everything underneath the traffic light layer. So we'll just say traffic light in capitals. Let's make sure we've got it spelled correctly. We'll delete one of the F's. Then the three basic elements that we'll be breaking that up into will be base, main pole, and light. So let's do that now. So double click, we'll have base, double click on the next one, main pole, and you'll see we're out of layers now. So in order to get a fresh layer, all we do is we move our mouse up to the tab on the left hand side there. You can see underneath the coloured donut we've got new layer. Left click on that and we have a new layer created. So the layer that we want for that is light. And we're going to do, as we did with the con layer, we're just going to drag and drop. So simply hold down your shift key, click base, scroll down with your mouse to light, holding down your shift key, and you can see we have all three selected there. Now holding down your left key on the mouse, you're going to drop that over traffic light. So we now have a construction layer and the beginnings of our grouping on our model layer. So we're going to be working on construction layer A. In order to do that, we need to float our mouse. You can see the column there that says current. We're going to float our mouse over the current layer and then click. And you can see that the tick mark also illustrates that that is now the active layer. If you look to the bottom of the interface, you can also see the active layer is shown up there. The other critical thing to remember, particularly if you have opened to begin, we need to note that we're working in millimeters. So next to the con layer note at the bottom of the interface, you can see it indicates what units we're working in. It also illustrates our snap commands, which we'll be working with next. Okay, so we have our con layer active, and we want all of our construction lines, out of habit for my part, to be red in color. So I've just simply highlighted everything on the con layer, clicked on the color box. You can see the word color directly underneath it, and I've just left clicked in the middle of the box and I've made those all red. That way when I'm working on the model, anything that's a construction line will be shown as red in color. So we're just going to move ourselves back down onto con layer A. So left click on that layer so we can see we're active. You can see we're active in the interface. Now we can switch off the layer manager. Now let's do a number of critical construction lines to get ourselves moving on this job. First, we'll put in an anchor point, the origin around which we're going to be building the mobile traffic light. Left click on the point tool, then with grid snap on, so we move down to the interface, you can see now as we move through it's working on those layers. What we're going to do is just locate it at 0, 0 origin. So on this occasion we're just going to type 0, 0, 0, and you can see that point is already anchored at our origin point. Now we could have done it manually, but on this occasion we can also input the information in by the keyboard as well. So the next command we need to do is put a construction line which is going to form the basis of our leg at a later stage. So we move to our cursor, across to the toolbar on our standard tab. On the top there you can see if we float over the top it should say the line polyline. Left click, make sure that your points commands are activated and we have the word point clicked on. So you can see that when you float over that point a little label should come up, and we can now drag to the left, and you can see if we click on F8 or down here you can see ortho is activated. Their lines are either going to be vertical or horizontal, and we're just going to type in 522.34. There we go, zoom out, and we have our first construction line in place. Now let's build up some of the circular construction lines that will form the feet and main pole of our light. So let's left click on the circle command. We're going to float back to our center origin, and this will be the construction line which will form our main pole. Again, make sure our snaps are switched on and we want point. You can see I've got my cursor switched on. I've clicked that on and there we go. And we're going to type in 39.82. There we go. There's the first circle. Now we have a base around that. So if we simply right click with the mouse, you will notice it'll repeat the same previous command. So we can float it over the point again, drag out to the left, and the larger one we want this time is 99.82. Excellent. Now we need the feet at the other end of that construction line. So right click to get a repeat on the command, move out to the end. We've got end activated on the points controls. We click to the end of the line, left click, drag out, and we want it to be precise, so we simply key in 77 this time. So now we have the base plate that will form the feet of their light. We've got a leg which is going to come off that. So in order to do that, we're just going to use the point command again to establish the end of that line. And we're going to use a fresh command. Now, in order to do that, we're going to dig under the polyline command. So if you look where my cursor is, you'll see a little triangle come up. We press down and scroll out to line from midpoint. It's the third one from the left. So we click on the endpoint, and this time we're going to put in 77.46. Enter. Okay. There we go. We'll just pause there for a moment. Now we've got a line which we can use to bisect the main feet, but we also want a little leg line here. So we're going to right click on the command bar and we're going to bring up that line from midpoint command. So in order to access 20 commands underneath what we've used, we simply right click on the command bar, come down to single from line point, click on the midpoint, and this time we're going to key in 36.23. Enter. There we go. Last element that we're going to do in this lesson now is just simply put an arc in. Make sure your end command is clicked on, and we scroll down underneath the circle command. Left click, you'll see the first one, arc from center. We click on the point and we're just going to drag up until you see the label that says end, and then we're going to rotate round and create the arc which will form the base of our foot. Excellent. Okay, so in this lesson, what we've done is we've looked at the layer manager to establish just the basic layer structure, and we've put in the preliminary construction lines which will form the leg of our mobile traffic light design. Okay, see you in the next lesson.